Hi everyone! So this morning, carrying on with our theme from VE Day, and obviously we did Mary Seacole yesterday for International Nurses Day, we're going to look at Winston Churchill. So he's a very important person for Britain and the United Kingdom, and he was our Prime Minister during the Second World War. Sorry, I've got one of my doggies in here who won't leave the room, so she might become a bit annoying. So anyway, here we go, Winston Churchill. Silly little girl. She's being very naughty. So Winston Churchill was born on the 30th of November 1874 at a place called Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire. His parents were a Lord and a Lady Churchill. Winston Churchill, you may not know this, wasn't very good at school. He didn't really pay much attention. He didn't really like school, but he did love to do art. He was very, very good at art. And he loved to paint. He did not have a very good relationship with his mum or dad, but he really, really, really loved his nanny. And she was called Elizabeth Ann Everest, like the mountain. Winston Churchill's father died at the age of 45 in 1895. And Winston Churchill himself, when he talked, he had what's called a lisp, so he found it quite difficult to make this sound with his mouth when giving speeches. So he found it quite difficult to actually talk in public, and that was something that he had to overcome. Winston got married to Clementine Hosier on 12th of September 1908. He had 5 children: Diana, Randolph, Sarah, Marigold and Mary. But unfortunately, Marigold died when she was very, very young. Now, Winston Churchill went into the army, and he has a very, very long military record, and that's the record that all the army keep of their soldiers. So in 1893, Churchill was in the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. That's a very prestigious college for officers of the army. He chose to join the cavalry. The cavalry are the people that ride horses. And he became a second lieutenant in the 4th Queen's Own Hussars. Alongside his military career, Churchill wrote about the conflicts he witnessed. Winston Churchill wrote a lot of history books as well. So not only did he draw a lot and paint a lot, he also wrote quite a lot of history books as well. This made him extra money, and it also allowed him to experience a range of different battles, strategies, and military situations. Winston Churchill, when he was in the army, was sent to Cuba. Now, if you've ever seen any photographs of Winston Churchill, you might have seen him smoking a cigar, and this is where he got his love of cigars from when he was in Cuba. He was sent to India and a place called the Sudan. Churchill left the British Army on the 5th of May, 1899. He became a war reporter when he went to South Africa to cover the Second Boer War. He was captured and made a prisoner of war in Pretoria, but he managed to escape the prisoner of war camp. Churchill joined the South African Light Horse, but he was still a war reporter. And he was made the First Lord of the Admiralty in 1911. And that's a position in the army. In this role, Churchill set about modernising Britain's battleships. In the Navy. The First Lord of the Admiralty is in the Navy. He was forced to resign from this post in 1915 because he had been heavily involved in the Battle of Gallipoli. That's a very famous battle in World War I, but it wasn't a very good battle. A lot of people lost their lives. It was considered one of the most significant disasters of World War I. Churchill rejoined the British Army, though, and served as a lieutenant colonel. So whilst all this was going on, Winston Churchill had won the seat, a parliamentary seat. So that means he's become a politician in his local government area for a place called Oldham. He was a member of the Conservative Party. So in this country, we have 3 parliamentary parties: Conservative, the Liberal Democrats, and the Labour Party. and he was the Conservative Party. But he defected. That means that he decided he didn't want to be in the Conservative Party anymore, and he went to the Liberal Party in 1904. In 1908, Churchill introduced a bill into Parliament to set up Britain's first minimum wages. So that means that he wanted everybody in the country that was a worker, an employee, to have a minimum wage. That meant that when they went to work, they had to be paid a certain amount. That was the lowest amount of money they could be paid, nothing lower. But in 1925, he decided he didn't want to be with the Liberal Party anymore. He wanted to go back and be with the Conservative Party. Couldn't make up his mind. Churchill was made the Chancellor of the Exchequer, but he didn't really do very well in that job either. The Chancellor of the Exchequer is basically the one that sets out where all the money for the government goes. During the build-up to World War II, Winston Churchill gave lots of speeches about the need to rearm Britain against Germany. So he thought that Britain didn't have enough arms, so weapons and planes, battleships, to protect themselves against Germany. Now, here's the most important bit. Winston Churchill and World War II. Now, this is where most of us know Winston Churchill from. On the day that Britain declared war on Germany, Winston Churchill was once again made First Lord of the Admiralty. Remember, that was the job that he'd held in World War I? And a member of the War Cabinet. So when we're at war, the government has to have a War Cabinet. That's where most politicians, most senior politicians, meet regularly. Neville Chamberlain, who was our Prime Minister at the time, resigned on the 10th of May 1940. So that's only really, if you think the 10th of May was only Sunday. So that's only just happened, really. Churchill became Prime Minister. Churchill gave many memorable speeches that inspired the British public, such as "This is our finest hour" speech, and gave the speech before the Battle of Britain. At the end of World War II, Churchill was a hero to the British public, and many thought his leadership was the biggest reason for the defeat of Hitler. But in 1945, the government election, Churchill was defeated because, whilst people thought Churchill had been a fantastic war leader, they didn't think that he could lead us in a country at times of peace. But he did serve as the leader of the opposition for 6 years. So whilst he's not Prime Minister, he can be the opposition leader. He did become Prime Minister for a second time in October 1951 when he was re-elected to become Prime Minister. But he resigned as Prime Minister in April 5th, 1955. Now, the reason he resigned was because he was poorly, and he had suffered a series of strokes in the 1950s. And he left Parliament altogether in the 1964 general election. And he died on the Sunday, the 24th of January, 1965, at the ripe old age of 90. And it was exactly to the day 70 years after his father had died. He died on exactly the same day. Isn't that amazing? Churchill's funeral was watched on television by 350 million people. That's a lot of people. And his ceremony took place at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And 112 nations, representatives from 112 different nations, attended his funeral. And that is some interesting facts and information about Winston Churchill. And tomorrow I will find you a story about Winston Churchill. There you go. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.